there, I am Marley Bird, and in this video I will show you how to do some duplicate stitch, both to create a fun motif on your fabric or to fix mistakes. Take a look down here at this really fun rocket ship sweater I knit for a toddler. I knit the whole sweater in black yarn, and I decided it needed a little rocket ship. So I did a rocket ship in red, and then I did some duplicate stitch with the yellow, and then I added the orange, both in duplicate stitch and long running stitches to make it look like fire coming out. Very easy to do and a great way to really make a very simple sweater really pop and make something different. The other useful thing when you're using duplicate stitch is to use it for stranded knitting. You could work a stranded knitting project, and on rows where you have 3 colors along the row, maybe you knit the project with just 2 colors, right? You just knit it with the 2 colors, and you go back after the fact and you do duplicate stitch in the areas where you wanted that 3rd color to have it just pop off the fabric. That's what I did here on this particular stocking. I wanted just to knit it in the round with the 2 colors in this section that I was working on, and then I went back and I used duplicate stitch to add those little pops of color to the actual stocking. And I did only add it to one side. I could have added it all the way around, but you know what? This is a great demonstration of what it would look like with or without. Creating the duplicate stitch is not difficult at all. It just requires a tapestry needle and the yarn you want to use for that duplicate stitch. Once you have those tools, you then need your fabric. We're going to demonstrate the duplicate stitch on a piece of stockinette stitch fabric today because it's easy to trace where you will be putting those stitches. I want to point out that if you are unsure where you want to do duplicate stitch and maybe you want to add a motif, it is very helpful to add some sort of boundaries to your work of how many rows I guess it would be how many rows and how many stitches. So that way you have a section of fabric so that you can count exactly how many stitches you need to add in there. This little yellow heart here was done with duplicate stitch using these sort of borders here as my path. I've gone ahead and started a little section of duplicate stitch for us to jump in with. So let's take a look. I have thread my purple yarn onto a bent tip tapestry needle. I really like to use the steel ones when I'm doing this. It just makes it easier for me to get into the stitches. Now, if your yarn is not already attached, go ahead and attach your yarn to the back side of your fabric and then begin to work the duplicate stitch, which is truly just mimicking the entire path of a stitch. My yarn is coming out of this stitch up here. So what I'm going to do is I will start to work duplicate stitch across my row just like so. So we are going to follow the path of this green stitch right here. And it will be easier once you see what we're doing. So I'm going to come up here. And we're going to follow this path. So this yarn comes around and it goes underneath that stitch right there above. Pull this through. As you're pulling your yarn, do not pull it too tight or it will look ugly. This yarn comes down here and it comes into where we came out, and then it goes underneath those 2 legs of yarn. So we'll pull that. Now it comes up here, follow this, underneath those, comes down here, goes underneath these 2 legs of yarn, and you just continue on in this manner. As you can see, we are literally just tracing the path of the stitch that's already there, creating a duplicate stitch. So it is a great way to add that fun pop of color without having to pre-plan where you might need some intarsia stitches, or maybe you want to add some initials to a project after you have completed it. This is a really great way to do it. Now, I've worked all the way across the row. If I wanted to work vertically, it's the same type of action. simply go into the bottom of the stitch that we're going to mimic, follow the path of the stitch, and then you can pop back up so that we can go up to the next one. Oops, see how that's what happens if you pull it too tight? I got a hold of that too tight, so you want to make sure you don't pull it too snug. And you just follow these paths of the stitches for as often as you like. Now, it is okay on the back side to have your yarn travel across some stitches if you are okay with that. If you want it to be a little bit more clean and more tidy because the backside is going to be showing, you would actually cut your yarn after you've used it for a series of stitches and then rejoin for another section and then weave in your ends. But for the most part, just traveling stitches up every now and again isn't so bad. It really resembles intarsia in that manner, but it's very easy to do duplicate stitch. It's a great way to not only add color to your work, but to tidy up a hole. If you have a hole in a project, you could actually use the same color yarn as your project. And all you would do is if there's a hole, you would just recreate essentially the stitch so that way you could close a hole. So if there was a big gaping hole here, I could just recreate this stitch to make this hole a little bit close together and we wouldn't have any sort of a hole. Okay. So that is how you add the duplicate stitch. It's very handy if you want to add some pops of design to a project, if you want to fix a mistake in a colorwork project, or purposely not add a third color to a row and then add the color later on. And it's very helpful to close holes or anything like that in like the heels of socks or between the fingers of gloves. Okay, now you know how to do the duplicate stitch. You can use this on many projects right here in Camp Colorwork. I hope you enjoy. Bye.